Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. South Asia, home to over 1.8 billion people, remains one of the least of course, economically integrated regions of the world, although it is most populous regions of the world. In today's program, we'll be talking about the bottlenecks that hinder economic integration of this region. According to UNESCO South Asia Gravity Model, the potential for intra-regional trade in South Asia is estimated to be 2 times in its current level. And this indicates a significant 67% of unrealized trade opportunities. The region's international trade volume stands at 67% of its current GDP. In today's program, we'll be talking about bottlenecks and that are stopping this region from realizing the connectivity, of course, and realizing its potential. Despite its strength in international trade, this region faces vulnerabilities due to global economic shifts and with the rise of populism movements and protectionist policies of different leaders, including leaders like Donald Trump. Of course, in today's program, we will be talking about the rise of populism and these protectionist policies, how they are going to be impacting South Asia and what needs to be done, and if we are going to be moving towards regional integration and connectivity, especially in regards to trade, what needs to be done by regional countries. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Ms. Naela Chohan, who is former Secretary Foreign Affairs. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Shahryar, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Mr. Chen, who is Senior Research Fellow at Shahryar Institute. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Dr. Hassan Zafar, who is a Senior Economist. Welcome to the program. Ambassador Naela, let me start with you. Of course, when we talk about these populist movements that we are witnessing across the globe now, and with Trump too in the presidency, what are your expectations, especially when we are hearing statements about tariffs, how this is going to be impacting global supply chains?
Well, thank you so much, Maryam, for inviting me to your program. The topic you have chosen is very important because President-elect Donald Trump will be taking office on the 20th of January, which is not very far from today. But before his taking office, he's already started giving statements of how he intends to run his second term in office. And it is creating a lot of concerns. A populist is not really a movement, it is just the leaders of certain Western countries are following this because of economic insecurities. President Trump came up with this idea of high tariffs. He says he loves the word tariff. If you look at his earlier term also, which was in 2017, exactly, he had similar slogans, and I think he in particular and his team should know how it affected American economy. And by the way, this is not just President Trump who was talking about tariffs. In Biden term also, there were tariffs. And if you talk about the Great Depression in the 30s, that was also one of the main factors were tariffs. So, United States of America has been exercising these policies. This won't be the first time, but now as we are also interlinked, and you asked about global chain, you can see how the Russian-Ukraine war has, damaged the supply chain, and now they are doing what's happening in Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. How is that affecting everybody? How Quad is going to affect these supply chains? How we, the countries which are from the south, we have to really do serious introspection on that.
Right, we will be talking about that as well, but let me bring in Mr. Chen into the discussion. Mr. Chen, when we about this particular issue, in your opinion, how does the rise of populist leaders like Donald Trump and their protectionist policies reshaped global supply chains or international trade system?
Yeah. Uh, Now Trump is coming back for the second tenure, and everybody think it will be a terrible thing. I do not think it will be so serious. I believe the Trump's coming back is not a very terrible event, although global trade will be greatly impacted. But even if the United States imposes high tariffs on large scale, the global trading system, I don't think will return to the past state of general tariffs imposed by various countries to protect the domestic markets. And second, considering Trump's administration's America First diplomatic strategy, if the United States does impose large-scale and high tariffs on the largest number of trading partners, the United States itself will be isolated from the world trading system. In the context of de-Americanization, globalization is likely to continue, and the U.S. economy may pay a considerable price. And the third point, I think whether the United States supports it or not, the world trading system will continue. And with the regional, bilateral, and investment remaining the primary means by which economies will promote trade liberalization. Thank you.
Right, right. Let me bring in Shahryar into the discussion. Shahryar, when we talk about, of course, of course, bottlenecks, in your opinion, why is this region least integrated? And tell us about the tariffs and non-tariff barriers that still persist.
So Maryam, this whole wave of populism is not just limited to the US, but you can see all of these populist leaders rising in the European Union as well, and
throughout the West.
Throughout the West, also in Central Asia and South Asia
exactly.
as well. So I agree with Dr. Naela Chohan when she basically says that it's mostly economic pressures and growing inflation and rising cost of living and rising unemployment as well in Western countries as well as developing countries as well. Developing countries again have an added pressure of the devastation caused by climate change as well. And all of these economic pressures have to be catered to. Now a populist leader comes up with solutions that are very short term and they're not very well thought out. When it comes to rising or raising tariffs to basically block imports from other countries, and when you look at the US and the President Trump's America First policy, it's mainly catering to the rise of China as well. And the US establishment overall is very on the same page when it comes to curtailing China's rise, which is more economic in nature rather than rise through military means. Now in that sense, raising tariffs has a twofold effect on the economy. One, the US is heavily dependent on their industries producing cheap products in China, and then they get imported into the US economy. Now raising the tariffs, especially on certain countries which have a competitive edge in producing products with bare minimum labor costs and high output or high technologically output products. Now bringing tariffs into that equation will raise the prices of the products in their own domestic market as well, and that would basically bring about another rise in inflation of most products. So this whole policy, I don't think it is very well thought out. Now if you apply that to South Asia, historically we have been not very integrated because of the whole economic situation, or I would say the security situation emanating from Afghanistan, which is now kind of like coming back into the balance after August 2021, even though now there are like greater security challenges that Pakistan is facing. But historically, during the USSR era, Central Asia was more aligned or with the USSR bloc, so they didn't really expand into South Asia. Now, with the whole issue with the Ukraine, these Central Asian republics are now looking to expand their markets and curtailing their dependency on Russia and the EU markets as well. And the only way they can basically counterbalance China and Russia, the eastern neighbor and the western neighbor, is to look at more markets through Afghanistan, through Pakistan, into South Asia, Southeast Asia and the Middle East. So, the region being least integrated, yes, historically that was the case, but now there are certain, a lot of initiatives that are being taken by Central Asian republics to basically counter that connectivity
Right,
issue.
but still those initiatives are not good enough, Ambassador Naela. According to UNESCAPE South Asia Gravity Model, intra-regional trade in South Asia has the potential to double. What actionable steps, in your opinion, are needed to achieve that potential, which is about 67% trade potential still remain unrealized, which is huge.
Well, Maryam, the thing is that if you're talking about South Asia, then you have to look at the elephant in the room. And that elephant has been very protectionist. And they have imposed a lot of not only tariffs, but non-tariff, non-trade barriers also. So, these non-tariff barriers are more pronounced, which are not visible to the general eye, but when it comes to Pakistan's exports, we are deeply affected by it.
Is it because of the trust deficit amongst the member states?
It is many things starting from our independence. So, trust deficit obviously is there, mutually trust deficit. It is not just one side having trust deficit, it is both sides having through historical experiences. We also tried having trade. We have agreements, but they have never been implemented in spirit because of the protectionist approach of our bigger eastern neighbor.
And now US and other Western countries are also moving towards those protectionist policies. How do you think that is going to be having an impact on South Asia, where international trade volume is comparatively better as compared to, of course, intra-regional trade volume?
You see, we have to rethink our strategies. Earlier on, our major trading partner was USA, and after that EU. And now if they levy such heavy tariffs, then our exports would be affected. I think we in Pakistan should look more towards China, which is a very friendly country, which doesn't have this protectionist approach, because like even China is saying, President Xi Jinping said to President Donald Trump that if you are putting tariffs on us, there is a whole world we can trade with, we do not have to trade with you. So, like Shahryar said, USA will further isolate itself, and those European countries where you have these populist leaders who are kind of pursuing this policy will further damage. You see, it becomes a vicious cycle. Then you are looking for protectionism to enhance your economy, but you further weaken your economy because you are protectionist. So, it is a vicious cycle that you enter into.
Right.
We in South Asia, particularly I think Pakistan has to look at countries where it can do trade. we don't have to put all our eggs in one basket.
Diversifying remains an important, of course, factor when we talk about it. But Mr. Chen, when we talk about different projections regarding global manufacturing, different reports tell us that 20% of global manufacturing is going to be moving away from China in coming years. How do you see that? And also, how do you think the collaboration between South Asian countries and China in coming years?
I don't think 20% will go away from China. And the American, Trump's policy, it will, I think, mainly affect three parts. One is, of course, China, because China is number one rising economy. And second, insofar as South Asia is concerned, I think it will mainly affect its trade relations with India, because India is also a rising economy. And third, actually, it has already started before Trump takes office. That is American trade relations with European countries. And so far as Pakistan is concerned, I don't think it will affect much. And South Asia is one of the least integrated regions in the world. The main reason, as everyone knows, is that India and Pakistan are the two major economies in South Asia, and there is hardly any economic cooperation between the two big powers in South Asia. If we want to develop regional trade in South Asia, I think we must first comprehensively resolve the issue of normalization relations, normalizing relations between India and Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan in the past, I think about a decade, Pakistan has taken a lot of initiatives, but there is no response from the Indian side. So, because in South Asia, India economy is number one, Pakistan is number two. If these two countries have no trade relations, then the regional countries have to depend on the outside countries. Now, here I think South Asian countries, why are so poor? I identify main reasons, including natural conditions, historical issues, and social problems, also big populations, poor infrastructure, and insufficient regional cooperation. Insufficient cooperation, regional cooperation, and mutual distrust among South Asian countries have led to low integrated trade and inability to fully exploit regional economic potential. So just now, the professor said Pakistan, because Pakistan-China economy now highly integrated. And we don't worry about American policies, high trade, because China itself is a big market. So in North, we have very good trade, economic relations with Pacific.
Right,
Okay.
but Mr. Shen, in your opinion, US-China rivalry and of course associated supply chain realignments, how they are going to be impacting the regional trade, especially when we talk about South Asia?
South Asia, I don't think our trade and economic relations with South Asian countries will be much affected, because already we have very good bilateral trade relations, even between China and India. Now we have, like last year, we set a new record of trade, and this year maybe the figure will be higher. Because in India, let's say made in India, well, they don't want to, made in jointly. But actually, when they say made in India, but they import all the parts from China and put all the parts together, then that is called made in India. So that's why we have high trade figures. Last year, more than 1 billion US dollars. I think this year it will be a new record. And with the northern countries like Russia in north, we have very good trade relations, and also our trade is settled by our own currencies. So we have avoided American tariffs. So so far as China America economic relations. Even if America raise tariffs, we are not afraid because China and the American economies are highly integrated. Lastly, if they have very high tariffs, then it is America who will be affected most.
Right, right. And Ambassador Naela, that remains an important aspect when we talk about US-China rivalry and its impact. But let's talk about securitization of global supply chains and of trade and its impact on the region, especially our region. What needs to be done in this regard, and how can countries like ours strike a balance between national security and enhancing international trade or trade volume with the neighboring countries?
You see, if you have a problem with one neighbor, that doesn't mean the whole region. How do you define region? Pakistan is a very geostrategically located. So we are part of SCO also, which talks about security, which talks about economy, which talks about development. We are members of ECO also, Economic Cooperation Organization. And these regional organizations are discussing ways and means to further enhance trade and further improve the well-being of the people of this region. So I think a regional approach, you're right, is important, but we have to work at it. It's not just having documents, they have to be implemented also.
Right, and Shahryar, when we look at the South Asian countries, many of the South Asian countries have overlapping portfolios in terms of trade. How can they create complementary trade portfolios to maximize economic gains?
Well, Maryam, first of all, there also is lacking a whole framework of trade within South Asia. There was the body of SAARC, but because of non-cooperation from one of the member states, that more or less has been defunct since a very long time. There was also discussion on a South Asia free trade agreement as well, which also is pending. So right now, when it comes to dependencies, and now since a lot of geopolitical changes in Bangladesh have also occurred, and the leadership currently right now is very looking forward to a conducive trade environment, especially with Pakistan, and more or less a lot of trade has also resumed between the two countries. Now, because of the whole geopolitical rivalry with India, I think more chances of trade or developing some sort of trade relations would be more with Southeast Asia or South Asian economies like Bangladesh, Maldives, even Nepal. That is something where Pakistan can now focus on, and the synergies can be created between the textile industries in Bangladesh and Pakistan. And for that, obviously, trade delegations from both sides can come and see where the synergies can be created. What areas are there which Bangladesh has a competitive edge, and areas where Pakistan has competitive advantage, and then some sort of synergies can be created. When
we look at the trade volume, of course, member states of ASEAN have over 25%, and when we look at our region in South Asia, it's over around 5%. There is a huge gap. So what practical steps are needed at this point in time?
So, Maryam, if we also analyze the ASEAN trade as well, a lot of that trade is also highly technically advanced as well, working in semiconductors, electronics, and high-end goods. We are still trading basic commodities like wheat, grains, textile, if we take it further up. When it comes to South Asia, unfortunately, a lot of our economies haven't developed to that extent in which we start like producing finished products. Bangladesh has a share in the international market when it comes to textile industry, but even then, that's like a small drop in the ocean when it comes to what developing economies are trading in. So I think when it comes to developing our economies further, there is like a lot more to be done. But again, like we have to take baby steps. First of all, as you also mentioned in your own introduction, that we are the least integrated region in the world. Once we start these like linkages, start like these people-to-people contacts, and start like developing infrastructure that finally connects us, I was like very surprised to see that our Central Asian neighbor Uzbekistan, after like I don't know how many years, a direct flight has started between Pakistan and Uzbekistan,
exactly.
and this is also like something that gives you an idea of how can you develop linkages, how can you develop trade relations when we just like started a direct route to Central Asia after like so many years.
Right, right. With South Asia being the most populous region in the world, but economically least integrated region in the world. We are talking about this, and we are joined now in the discussion by Dr. Hassan Zafar, who is senior economist. Welcome to the program, Dr. Hassan. Dr. Hassan, we are discussing about the rise of different, of course, populist leaders like Trump and other protectionist policies, and how this is going to be impacting, of course, global supply chains. When we talk about South Asia, it remains least integrated, and one of the reasons is security. But how do you think that a private sector, what role can private sector play in bridging the gap between different countries or member states of South Asia in this regard?
Thank you very much for your question. Let's come to the role of the private investors and individuals in bridging the gaps. But the first part of your question, the populism around the world that is on the rise. And as we can see in the recent years, changes are taking place globally. These are the shift from unipolar to multipolar world. And see very strong statements coming from different world leaders. For example, in the recent Los Angeles tragedy, the fire in Los Angeles, Elon Musk, who is an advisor of the incoming President Trump, he made a statement that the LA wildfires the responsible for spreading the fire is diversity, equity, and inclusion. That means this era is going to see the end of political correctness, and that will have a serious impact on the way we have traditionally understood global trade. So this is going to be, this era is going to see the end of global politics in the sense globalism and global trade. It will adversely affect, and there will be a rise of regionalism, nationalism. So when we are thinking about South Asia, now this is a very different region from the rest of the world in the sense that it has remained underdeveloped. It has not been, it has tried, but it has not entirely become part of that developed world, that Western world. And by the time we were ready to adopt those values and those styles of businesses.
Right. And Dr. Hassan, we have discussed the bottlenecks of these that have caused, of course, the least integrated region. But let's talk about what can be done in regards to, of course, private sectors. Can private sectors of different countries or different member states of South Asia play a role in this regard? In bringing up the trade volume?
There will definitely have to be a strong government support if the private sector has to function effectively. It cannot function effectively on its own because there are regional challenges, there are security challenges. This state has to provide that security to the private sector, not in terms of trading links, but also in terms of how those businesses are conducted with other nations. We have recently witnessed this thing. The Chinese private sector, though the companies that are operating in Pakistan, they had serious security concerns, and this on that would only be addressed at the state level. So, private sector. The main challenge for the private sector in recent times is the security issue. How can that be addressed? Because we can see the situation developing in the Middle East. We can see a situation developing in South Asia also. I'm
Right, right. And Dr. Hassan, of course, that remains an important issue. But let's talk about remittances and migration with US imposing tighter immigration policies. How can South Asia mitigate the impacts of that, and of course, with the loss of remittances and skilled laborers?
Yes, the remittances will continue to rise. We should not worry because uh, as the global challenges arise, there will be a good reason for overseas Pakistanis to send money back home because this is where they feel safest, despite everything, despite all
Right.
discouraging.
Dr. Hassan, unfortunately, we are facing some technical issues. We'll get back to you, but let me bring the same question to Shahryar. Shahryar, of course, we know that US is imposing tighter immigration policies, and with President Trump coming back to the office, we are going to be witnessing much stricter immigration policies. How can South Asia mitigate the potential loss of remittances and skilled labor opportunities, which a lot of South Asian countries depend on at this point in time?
So, Maryam, depending on how seriously the new US administration takes this whole like protectionist agenda forward, I think it would be a major shift from multilateralism to like more regionalism or bilateral relations. So I would basically see that a lot of like regional groupings, for example, the SCO, the BRICS, even SARC, even ECO as well, as Madam has also like mentioned, these like regional trade blocks will become more significant, and we'll be trading more with our regions or with our regional countries as well. Even though the US was the main proponent of the WTO as well, and right now because of the US policies and the rhetoric that is emanating from Washington, even the credibility of WTO is now in question. So the whole like agenda of like free trade, globalization, that is also like being questioned right now. So I think there will be more shift towards lesser multilateralism, but like more towards regional blocks and the regional trade dynamics that would become more important. And obviously geopolitical events, especially in the Middle East, also between Russia and Ukraine, would have a major impact on how countries will be trading. So this will have an impact on the whole free trade agenda in the world, with China taking a lot of like lead, and also a lot of like mutual development that will be happening or like coming with regional initiatives like CPEC, which will have a very, I would say, a positive impact on Central Asia, South Asia, and even the Middle East as well. So we'll see a lot of more trade blocks emerging because of CPEC.
Right.
And a lot of cooperation.
Right. Dr. Hassan, you earlier alluded to, of course, a slowing down of globalism, and like Shahryar also mentioned about the need for, or the more countries moving towards bilateral relations or bilateral ties, and rise of multilateralism. But when we look at our region, of course, there is poor infrastructure, but we have a lot of initiatives like Belt and Road Initiative. How do you think this is going to be filling the gap with the member countries not meeting the deadlines?
Yes, the BRI project is important, not only for the region, but for the entire world, because it is connecting now half of the world. For us, it is important because of the CPAC. But the CPAC route, as you also mentioned, there are regional challenges and the connectivity. The connectivity again pertains to uh, the problem that is that CPAC has been facing. We have witnessed the security challenges. But yes, we will have to see uh, because if we are thinking in terms of BRI and trading with China, then we will also have to see what we can offer China. For example, if we look at the India-China trade, that is hugely in favor of China. Only 8% India is exporting, and India is importing about 111 billion dollars is the Indian import from China. So that in that trade relation, China is clearly dominating. That exactly is the case with Pakistan, because if Chinese goods are being manufactured in Pakistan and we are importing Chinese goods, raw material, then what are we offering in return? Otherwise, it will be a just one-sided trade. So we have to see what we can offer in return. So otherwise, if this trade balance, if this trade is not rightly balanced, it is going to be totally a liability for any nation that becomes a partner with Chinese companies.
Right, and talking about liability, Mr. Chen, when we talk about, of course, the geopolitical situation which is changing every day, and of course the external shocks, in your opinion, how can regional trade be increased for the creation of new industries and sectors that is resistant to external shocks?
The economies of China and the South Asian countries are highly complementary. And there is also, before talking about that, I also believe that, among South Asian countries in the region, there is a great potential for trade relations because now among in 8 countries in South Asia, including Afghanistan, trade with that is the trade of the 8 countries with outside countries beyond South Asia is 90%. Only 10% within the countries in South Asia. So that's why I see a great potential in of trade and economic relations among the 8 South Asian countries. And the economies of China and the South Asia countries are highly complementary. And there is also broad room for cooperation in the field of digital and green economy. On the one hand, the two sides have a very strong willingness to cooperate. And on the other hand, the two sides have good foundation for cooperation. China and Pakistan are building an upgraded version of the CPEC and jointly building a green economic corridor. And Chinese companies are so actively participating in the construction of digital infrastructure in Bangladesh and other South Asian countries. And China will continue to adhere to the guiding principles of extensive consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits, openness, green, and integrity, and high standards of to benefit people's livelihood and sustainability, and promote the economic and trade relations between China and South Asian countries to a new height. And in terms of promoting openness and cooperation, China has strengthened cooperation with South Asian countries on the multilateral frameworks such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS cooperation mechanism, and promote open regional economic development, jointly upheld international economic and trade rules, and jointly implemented the Global Development Initiative. I think especially the BRICS cooperation is very important because now the total GDP of BRICS members is even more than G7. So this is a good platform. We should have cooperation, trade, and economic cooperation under the framework of the BRICS. Thank you.
Right, right. And Ambassador Naela, of course, you have heard about all the points. And in this era of global populism, how can South Asia balance regional trade with these protectionist pressures and protectionist policies from the West, especially from US?
Well, as has been discussed by illustrious panelists here, there are many factors to it. Protectionism will only damage USA and those economies that are exercising this policy. When we talk about regional connectivity, if you look at Pakistan, we have this Wakhan corridor, which is, at this moment little volatile, but with cooperation with China and Central Asian republics, if we can have that connectivity, trade route from Gwadar to Urumqi has already been experimented successfully. ECO also, Zaidan, Taftan railway lines, we are working on it. So there are many regional options that Pakistan can exercise for enhancement of its trade and also its relations with the regional countries.
Right, right. And Dr. Hassan, when we talk about all these factors and we have come to the conclusion of the program, in your opinion, we have discussed all the factors and the bottlenecks. Moving ahead, what needs to be done, especially when we talk about the political will by the member state of the South Asian leaders?
Yeah, but what needs to be done in this kind of protectionism that, in my understanding, will arise in the future. Every nation needs to take a strong stance. We cannot play softball forever now, and I'm happy that Pakistan is taking a strong stance on Afghanistan. It's important that we assert ourselves in the region, and that will really help us asserting our standing in terms of that. It will give confidence to the investors that we can protect, that we can protect our trade routes, and that is very important. Just like Ambassador Naela rightly pointed out, that the Wakhan corridor is a little volatile, but it is really important for our trade relations with the rest of Central Asia. So Pakistan really needs to take a strong stance on everything that comes in our way of trade relations.
Right, that has to be last word for the program. I thank all four of my panelists for joining us in today's discussion. And of course, when we talk about this region and with global instability, political leaders must learn from other examples like EU and ASEAN to make this region prosperous. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.